Welcome back to Brothers in Boots. My name is Mike.
My name is Jeff.
And today we will be finishing up and adding more to the last conversation we had about United States and North American based tanneries, and now turn our attention to European based tanneries. If you'd like this kind of content, please like, comment, subscribe, especially if you have any specific questions down below, because this one will get a little bit more complicated with kind of some of the just strange realities of the tanneries and how they operate in Europe that aren't as straightforward as the American ones.
I think you're going to run this one, aren't you?
Yeah, for the most part, but let's go ahead and get started with. Well, it's hard to say. It's hard to say my favorite tannery because I think they're pretty tied with Merriam, but and the Chloe's coming. But one of my favorites and kind of one of my better daily drivers, to be entirely honest, and also unironically become one of my more work boot leathers, is Battlelassie Carlo. Battlelassie Carlo is an Italian leather company that specializes specifically in almost exclusively double shoulder. So in the last video we talked about this a little bit, but double shoulder is where instead of splitting the bend down the middle to form two sides, they just stamp out both shoulders and oftentimes get close to 16 square feet of just pure double shoulder. This is a
Carlo is part of the title for anybody who's wondering. He didn't give you a model of leather there. It's a two-word title, Battlelassie Carlo.
Yep. So this one is in their tannage called Waxy. Now, what Waxy is, it is the waxed version of their Pueblo, which I will show here in a minute. It is a 4.5 to 5 ounce, 8 on the timber scale, double shoulder bovine leather. Has immense pull-up. I picked the color of gray here, so you're not going to see near as much pull-up out of it as you would their lighter colors, but as you can see, it has a very, very bright gray pull-up that sticks around. This is up there with double stuff in terms of pull-up. Takes scratches extremely well. As you can see, there's like one here, very easy to buff out. Overall, very durable. The toes are the things that get beat up the most on my boots, and there's some marks on it, but nothing over the top. If you've seen my chestnut oil Latigo, which some of the people have seen on various social media platforms, those toes have done a third of the time in the data center these have done and look significantly worse than these do. So overall, stiffer than most American leathers. Obviously, the monkey boot's going to even be stiffer because of the multiple areas that have 3 panels in it. But all double shoulder, very good on the temper scale at a lighter weight than a lot of American leathers need to pull that off. The quality control of Battlelassie is fantastic. I have seen very few terrible hides. Overall, they do a very good job. They're a tannery from the 70s. They're not one of the, like ancient Italian 700-year-old ones. We're going to talk about some of that kind of stuff today. But these guys are based in the 70s. This is their Pueblo article. This is the unwaxed version of it. The kind of texture and the matte finish you see is induced on purpose. They take their Minerva leather and do these uniform scratches across it to, 1, bring the sheen down, and number 2, make this very uniform pattern that you see in it that kind of, hides scratches. These have had just as much time as the other pair in the data center. As you can tell, you can hardly tell they were in the data center. At this angle right here, you can kind of see some of the true scratches on the toe, but when I change it this way, they're basically gone. Great from that perspective. Hides scratches extremely well. This is 5.5 ounces. Once again, very stiff temper. This is canvas and leather line, as you can see. Like it resists fighting it over itself quite a bit for a canvas boot, especially at 5.5 ounces. The one I do not have here is Riccardo Shell Cordovan. This is also Italian tannery in the Kilty. That's not actually Battlelassie in the Kilty. Is their Minerva line, which is just the regular smooth. I'm not a huge fan of Minerva. When you have stuff like Waxy and Pueblo, these have way too much character and fun. to waste a bunch of time with Minerva. But the Japanese absolutely love Minerva. And one of the most exclusive Japanese makers, White Cloud or Goto-san, almost exclusively uses Battle Axe Carlo. So that should kind of tell you what kind of pedigree.
It always makes me think of New Mexico.
Yeah. Overall, like I said, it's fantastic tannery. Comes in at a very reasonable price. These Pueblo and waxy sides are, usually fluctuate between like $198 and $210 a side. Well, a side for them is double shoulder, so it's more than a side really, because all of that 14 to 16 square feet is pretty much completely usable. So price wise, they are they hit in the same price range as a lot of the other guys that we mentioned in the last video, with the exception of Horween, who is priced a bit higher. So overall, they come in at a good price. Ton of the leather is usable, and we start talking about the usability, they're probably getting up to Seidel price for performance in terms of how much of it really can overall be used. Comes in 16 colors for the waxy, and I think 19 colors for the Minerva and Pueblo. So almost every color shade is available.
Tons of colors.
Yeah, every color shade's there. And they do have Minerva box if you want like a pebbled embossed. They have that as well. It's just the Minerva with just an embossed print on it. Nothing else is special about it from that perspective. But overall, it's definitely up there in my top 3 favorite tanneries.
Are you still connected?
Yes, I am.
I think we are unconnected for like, I don't know, 20 seconds.
Okay. Well, the good news is the recording will have my side of it, so. But yeah, like I said, top 3 tanneries. Fantastic product, very good price for what you get, especially with the color options. And overall, one of my go-tos at this point. I recommend this as much as I recommend Oiled Latigo from Lickett and Craig or Dublin from Horween. Like it's definitely up there. I own Pueblo monkey boots and the sapphire color, and I am dancing with the reality of maybe doing Badalassi waxy natural, which they call bone, and a pair of monkey boots as well. Overall, fantastic leather. Also have 2 boots that have Badalassi Carlo Pueblo as the tongue. Very good tongue leather. For a veg stand on top of that, which is shocking. I was expecting that to be a lot more painful. But great tannery. Lots of options. Good volume discounts. Like you get 7% off at Hide 3 or 5, one of the two. Hide 2 or 3 get you 5, then you unlock 7. A couple more, you unlock 10. So they got great volume discounts from that perspective. Their minimum orders are pretty good. Most of these Italian guys, unlike the Americans that we're talking like hundreds, if not thousands of square feet, a lot of these guys are usually in the, what they call their 10 hide minimums, which Badalassi Carlo is smaller than that. But they usually come in what's called a 10 hide minimum, where you have to buy 10 whatever they've designated as their they'll give you like what the square foot range, but they give you their ideal hide size, which is with a 1 hide. So like if it's like a 16 to 21 square feet, they're usually 17 or maybe 17 and a half is going to be their ideal size, and you've got to buy essentially 170 square feet, which is their 10 hide minimum. Guys like Clover,
they do reverse as well.
No. So Badalassi Carlo only does those. That's Merriam, and Merriam's got a ton of front to back options, classic options, finishing options. They're a little bit more unique, but no, Badalassi, you are choosing the finish with the line.
I thought I read that Badalassi did rough out too.
Well, you can flip any of it, but they don't do any like suede rough out, where like the actual finish layer is done on the rough out itself. But you could flip it just like you would flip a Parasite L.
Wait for me.
Okay. So the next
I'm not going to be able to find it that quick.
the next tannery, and also up there in my Mount Rushmore of tanneries is one that everyone's probably familiar with at this point, as they have really blown up in popularity, especially due to Truman Boot Company in the last 5 years, and that's the Merriam Tannery. Merriam is a tannery that primarily focuses on horse, but they do have other articles like calf and whatnot. Most people know them for what I'm holding here, which is their horse butt TPR finish, which is a thermoplastic resin finish over the horse rump to essentially make it kind of faux look like shell cordovan. Now, these come in a ton of different styles and finishes. This is what's called their Classico and TPR finish. But besides that, they have Classico, they have waxed, they have Nemesis, they have... Oh, no, sorry. Balassi Carlo is Nemesis. Is that what you sent me? Oh,
Yeah, I
the
found
reverse
it.
hides.
Screenshot.
Those, I think, are meant for liners. I think those are only 4 ounces, if I remember. They might only be 3. Sorry, they have the Nemesis style. They have the reverse style. And with them, a lot of these can be mix and match. This is Classico, which is no marbling, no museum, nothing like that with TPR finish. It's just a straight, smooth double horse rump with the TPR finish. They have
4.5 is as wide as it goes. So
okay.
Probably right.
Yep. The overall feel is most people like Merriam. It is one of the softer horse rumps. Holds its shape really well. Has a pretty good temper. Doesn't have the insane person temper that Shinky does. And it's very accessible. It's not cheap. Like don't let anybody fool you. Like, oh yeah, same price as Chrome XL. No, it's significantly more expensive than Chrome XL. It's already an expensive leather. A $350 large, like extra large horse rump can do 3 pairs, maybe depending on the size and width, of 6-inch boots. You can get more than 3 6-inch boots out of a side of Chrome XL. Unless you're making a ton of mistakes. But if you're making mistakes with horse rump, they're costly mistakes. And even then, safely, you're probably going to more likely get 2 pairs out of it. So it is more expensive, but also, once again, it's horse rump. And horse rump is just a byproduct of stuff that doesn't become shell. All those things I mentioned earlier of the different styles and finishes are all available in their shell cordovan as well. But on that note, so I don't have any waxed horse rump, the Classico waxed horse rump. I really wish the American distributor, which is Rocky Mountain Leather Company, and the American bootmakers would start keeping it, because I think most people would prefer the waxed horse rump over the TPR horse rump. Because this TPR, once it's gone, it's gone. You can't put it back on. The TPR is what makes it super shiny. Thermoplastic resin.
I thought that's what your wax horse rump was.
No, I'm about to grab that. This is Classico TPR horse rump. This is navy from Whites. Yep, this is regular Whites. And I have this same boot in Tuscanello, and then through Frank's I also have Macchiato, which is like the uniform version of Natural, all in the Classico TPR. I just grabbed navy because it is a unique color.
I can add, there are people out there that think that the Toscanello is a type when it's really just a color. But I have run across a fair amount of people who are like, well, what type do you have? Oh, I've got the Toscanello. Okay, that's the color. What type? No, that's the type, Toscanello.
Yep.
Whatever, for what it's worth. For anybody out there who thinks it's a type, it's not.
No, it's a color. Tuscanello is the wrapper of a cigar, so it's technically cigar color. This is what Jeff's talking about. This is what's called reverse waxed Merriam horse rump in black, which it looks gray. As you can tell from the tongue, it is most definitely black. This is combining 2 of the things I mentioned earlier. This is a reverse hide, which is one of their finish types, and this is a wax finish. You can mix and match all of these. This could literally be a museum reverse waxed horse rump that takes a reverse finishing with a museum dye job and a waxed finish layer. All of these are completely mixable, and it creates just an absolutely stunning boot. So as you can see, I've wore a lot of the wax here off, so this moves and shifts just like a standard rough out would. Same with up here. You can see me swipe it down. You can see me swipe it up, forward, back. It does all the same, coloration changes we're used to with rough out. Same on the toes, so I've worn a ton of what's on the toes off. So you can see me swipe it on, swipe it off, color changes. But right here on the side is where the magic happens, right? This is all still completely waxed. So it feels smooth. And like this isn't like the Horween wax fleshes that you can see the dips and the divots. Like if I zoom this in here, like it looks like a smooth leather. It feels like a smooth leather. And as you wear all this off, which obviously does wear off, right? You get what's left up. And now this is very easy to re-wax. Like this isn't hard. This isn't like where you're going to be putting 20 layers of Venetian on it and so on and so forth. This is a very fine rough out. So 2 or 3 layers of cream, couple layers of wax, you're going to get a feel pretty similar to this. Now, cure time between those takes some time. If you do it right, you're talking 18 hours between applications to really get it to look like this part, right? But overall, fantastic process, fantastic boot. Takes an already soft horse rump, makes it softer, but it still, as you can see, retains its shape extremely well. So even though it's soft and not hard to do, springs back into its shape, no problem. And that's one of the properties of horse in general, right? This happens to be a pair of Tahura. This is the Benjamina on the Benjamina 2.0 last. It is one of the few Indonesian makers that has a very... I mean, obviously, it's modeled off of White's cutter, if anyone can't tell. It's modeled off their cutter model. But it's very Pacific Northwest last. It's one of the few Indonesian makers that actually has a last with some real arch support in it. But yeah, once again, big fan.
I fucking love that leather. I love that leather treatment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I really, really wish that especially Franks would bring in the non-TPR. Like one, just the waxed finishes I think would be more desirable toward the average customer, number one. But number two, these reverse setups are fucking awesome. We're going to talk about another one here in a little bit called Galidi. Yeah. Italian names, man. That they're one of their Coletta horse rump leather. Everyone thinks that the marbled look of it is the smooth side, but it's actually the rough outside that has the super marbled look. None of it's the actual smooth side. But yeah, this anything you can get in Merriam reversed is already cool. And it'll have a unique color and process to it. It'll look very much like the uppers up here. But the reverse waxed is just stunning. And on top of it, like I said, you can mix and match these. You could get it in museum. You could do waxed Classico. You can. It's very easy to order with them. They're a fantastic tannery, and you can order directly from them. Not to mention they have very good distributors across the world that just do a great job. So, but yeah. One thing I didn't mention about Badalassi, obviously we wouldn't do this with Merriam because they're mostly horse, but Badalassi is also super common for leather jackets. So for those you guys that want boots to match your leather jackets, Arrow leathers, Field leathers, there's one other real famous European maker, all have switched from using a lot of Shinky and Chrome XL to Badalassi. It's a great option in that category. So actually, Greg from Field Leathers is making me a Badalassi Pueblo Emerald jacket.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty sweet. But yeah, Merriam, one of the greats of the Italian makers. Probably, I mean, this probably a name no one's not heard on this podcast.
I think it's the most common name, in my opinion.
Yeah, they've really boomed in the last 5 years. They have tons of color options. Not quite Badalassi color options, but getting there. They make a fantastic product. Like I said, it's worth every bit, especially if you're really wanting horse. Like you could base all your decisions entirely off of cow from Badalassi, horse from Merriam, and easily cover most of the bases from the Italian tanneries, especially if you're comparing them to like Horween and Wickett and Craig options. Horween and Wickett and Craig have a hard time standing up to these guys in terms of some of the stuff they put out. Like it's definitely something that they're falling behind on. But I think those guys are working on it. There's a new oiled Latigo coming from Wickett and Craig that's supposed to knock everyone's socks off. But so I made a comment there, and now it's time to talk about that comment because there's two other really well-known tanneries, and we've mentioned both of them, I think, in the last video as well. But we talk about Cal. Badalassi Carlo's main competitor is a new interest. Well, they're not new. They're also a 70s tannery, but one that's become very interesting. A lot of people haven't heard of, and that is Conceria Walper. That's the American pronunciation. I'm sure the Italian one's entirely different. And they make the Buttero or Butero, depending on who you ask, which is the Buttero is well known as a leather. Most people don't know where it comes from. This happens to be a ghost version of the green Buttero, the black burro Buttero green waxy, but it is just green Buttero underneath, where you see it peeking through in certain spots. Buttero is a very stiff leather. Like, this is not a structured toe, and you can see how hard I'm pushing just to collapse the toe. Very, very tough leather. They make this in 3, 5, and 7 ounce for all the Butteros. 9 out of 10 on the temper scale. Only thing really rivaling Shinky and Horween Shell Cordovan from that aspect. You know, very stiff, nice big dink. Really, really fights flexing this direction. For all you guys listening from Frank's that have ordered a pair, this is the break-in that's awaiting you. It's it's a stiff leather. It is an extremely stiff leather, but it's durable leather. It comes in a lot of cool colors. They have very cool color options, and overall, once again, the Italian Leather Consortium, very good company. Lots of solid offerings. They're one of the ones, them and Badalassi Carlo specifically, I haven't seen many bad hides from. I've seen a couple kind of iffy Merriam hides that I wouldn't purchase, but like both Badalassi and Walper kind of getting at the point I would be comfortable buying them sight unseen. I still try to pick them out if I can, especially for like Rocky Mountain, Tannery Row, these places that'll let me do it. I still do. But I would say overall, like, I would be, if I had to, I'd be comfortable buying Badalassi or Walper sight unseen, and knowing that it's going to go to a bootmaker in with more than plenty usable leather, in a perfectly good state to make a fantastic boot. This one, you know, right here included. They do have some other offerings short of the Buttero. They have their embossed kind of pebbled version, which looks just like Palisades Bison, called Dollaro, where somehow they ununiformly shrink it, but it looks like it's rolled through an embosser to make its fantastic tannage. Looks very cool. It's cow bison. It literally looks like you're buying a pair of Palisades for Italian double shoulder. The next one they have is their grid, which looks like tons of like random scratch marks, like deep scratch marks with a knife over the top of the hide to make a very unique random hatch pattern look. That's another fantastic one. They have their rustic ones, which are called Mud, which are way too soft for boots, so wouldn't even bother with it. Do make a fantastic liner and sock liners. I've made a couple sock liners out of them. They do great for that. But overall, good tannery, very reasonably priced. A little bit more expensive on some stuff than Badalassi, a little cheaper on other stuff than Badalassi, but they're in that sweet spot of nothing over 240, nothing under 180, and you're getting all double shoulder. Now, Walper does do something that the other tanneries don't do. With these Italian tanneries, you're going to find they almost exclusively use double shoulder and double rump. On the very, very good ones, Walper will do Buttero bellies, they'll do Buttero skirting, and they'll do Buttero front. Not a lot of that gets produced. I don't always see it in the full color range. It's really meant for like wallets, accent pieces, bags, stuff like that. But they do produce some stuff out of the other parts of the hides that are left that you don't really see out of the Merriams, out of the Badalassi Carlos, or out of the next tannery we're going to talk about after this, which is the other Italian horse tannery, which is Chloe. On Instagram, the otherwise known as at Genuine Shell Cordovan, it's the Chloe tannery. I don't have any Chloe at the moment. I have some on the way. They have a new article called Chloe Feng Horse Rump, which is more or less looks a lot like Shinky. It's shrunken in the same way that gives kind of that like turtle skin look that you get with Shinky, or dragon scale look that you get with Shinky. Supposed to be a smidge thinner, because Shinky usually comes in between 7.5 and 8 ounces. Supposed to be more than 6, less than 8. Instead of a 9 on the temper scale, it's supposed to be a 7.5 on the temper scale. And it comes in, I think right now it has 7 color options. So we'll see how that one works out. But Chloe is well known for their horse rump and their horse pieces, especially through the Indonesia makers. But a lot of the original olive boots that were being made out of olive horse rump were actually coming from Chloe, not Merriam. Merriam's olive color is very dark olive. Chloe's is a very lime green color, very bright color. So whenever you see an olive Italian horse rump, it's 9 times out of 10 going to be Chloe. No one else runs a color quite that light, including Badalassi and Merriam. They don't run that light of an olive. It's very, very like lime green Gatorade color. It's the easiest way to explain. Yes, it's very bright. Some people like it, some people don't. I showed a picture of it to Art, and he's like, "Man, I really like that like electric lime green color." I was like, "Oh, that's not the color I would have picked, but here we are."
Guess if you're a Seattle fan,
yeah,
Seahawks.
yep, that's getting into that color range. Yep. So, Chloe is an older tannery, very good tannery. They also do small minimums. Very easy to work with. You can easily hit them up on Instagram, and they'll send you all the information you need to order. They're very helpful with questions. Great tannery overall. Lots of good boots have been made out of them. They focus really heavily on horse and other exotics. They do... well, I've seen shark skin recently. I've seen them do kangaroo, ostrich, stingray, and caiman. I made a note there. Merriam also does horse rump. Or sorry, does kangaroo. Of course they do horse rump. That's their main thing they're known for. Sorry, Merriam also does waxed kangaroo, which is really well known. Anybody that's seen like the Grant Stone stuff, all the Grant Stone kangaroo is almost all Merriam. That's why it's called rust and jungle green. They line up with those colors. Through Tannery Row, anything with the word rust would be Rugginet, is what they would call it. Jungle green, they call it jungle green. The Italians, I think they call that jungle green Bottigligia, is what the name of it is, which is the same thing that they call the emerald green Pueblo. So,
You mentioned Stingray. I eventually want to get another pair of those.
yep.
I've got a pair of cowboy boots that I never wear anymore, but I want some Stingray again.
Yep, they do shark and stingray and caiman. I don't know what the minimum one is. They're like the exotics like that. Their minimums are pretty. Like I think their shell Cordovan order minimum is only 3 shells. It's pretty small. So they're good about that. And they're like I said, if Merriam is the main horse you're looking at, Chloe is your alternative, right? Just as if you're looking at Badalassi Caro, Walper's one of your big alternatives. The other big Italian tannery that's gotten popular over the last 2 years that I mentioned a little bit is Giudi. It's Guidi. And they are known for sure. They're known for their colada horse rump, and that colada is a dyed horse rump that is solid on the smooth side, the side you're supposed to use, but the back side has like this insane marbling museum style effect that most people use. You see a lot of the Indonesians use it. I think Frank's almost brought some in to run for Dale and another person that were interested in it. I've seen it in navy, I've seen it in purple, I've seen it in black, and I think there's two other colors floating around as well. I think there might have been a burgundy color as well. But it is actually using the rough outside of the horse. And it's just a unique style. It, like I said, I have a pair from Tahura coming in it, so we'll see what my initial impressions later are. But there's been a lot of it made. A lot of people seem to like it. It seems to wear quite well. Not as well known as like Chloe and Miriam from a horse perspective, but you know, it's sold quite a bit. It is available. They do have a ton of options for it. Their list is just as long as Miriam's in terms of like ways you can finish it and different options and yakety yakety. Chloe's no different. But I have not seen anything from them in terms of shell cordovan. Only in double horse rump. Maybe that's coming. We'll see. Not sure. You know, once you take the shells out, the double horse rump's basically worthless. You know, from like a companies like Shinky and Merriam's case, the majority of horse rump is really anything that wouldn't make desirable shells. That's how it gets created. And speaking of shell cordovan, I'd be remiss to not talk about the last Italian tannery, which specializes almost exclusively in shell cordovan, which is Riccardo. Riccardo is a almost purely shell cordovan tannery in Italy with a ton of options. They also do a similar setup to what Merriam does, where they have like their Classico, their reverse. They have museum, they have marbled, and a couple others. But they're really well known for their museum and marbled shells. All the shell kilties you've seen me show that are all marbled, those are all actually Riccardo shell cordovan kilties. And the backside of them shows you like the painstaking effort they go through to hand paint those to give those like beautiful marbled effects. They don't leave it up to some random machine to do. It's all done 100% by hand. Fantastic tannery. The shell cordovan is very reasonably priced. Little cheaper than Shinky, little more expensive than Chloe. Obviously not at the Horween prices. Their marbled shell, I think, looks way better than Horween's marbled shell. Horween's marbled shell looks like it's done by a machine where you get blotches that don't make a lot of sense. The Riccardo ones look like a work of art, where someone sat down with a sponge on the backside. And you can tell it's on the backside because the color concentration on the back is a lot stronger. And they literally dye it from the backside to make the marble effect. It's quite cool. And that's most of the Italian tanneries. Now, there's tons of little shadow tanneries and, you know, small ones that specialize in one thing that only make one product. Obviously, we can't dive into the entire depth of those or we'd be here for hours. But that's the big players in the Italian leather scene. If we're talking about the Italian leather scene, we'd be remiss to not talk more about the English leather scene. Two prominent companies that we know from the English perspective are going to be CF Stead or CF Steed, depending on who you talk to, for their expansive lineup, absolutely punching stunning colors and a million options of tannages, some of which I'm pretty sure overlaps for one reason or another. I think have to do with like thicknesses of their splits for suede. But CF Stead,
they're supplying. I mean, there are a lot of shoe and boot manufacturers in the UK, and they're pretty much supplying them exclusively.
Spain too.
I mean, they are putting out a ton of product in a ton of areas.
Yeah, they're the kings of suede. There's no better suede company. No one touches them with a 10-foot stick. And here,
no better kudu.
That's true. Getting to that. It's sitting there. Haven't got to it yet. This is Crazy Cow Samba. Samba is just what they call their red. This is a waxed suede. Its counterpart is the Waxy Commander, which is the waxed smooth side of the split. And I'm sure probably like 12 other of their products between their Commanders, their Mohawks, their Ramblers, so on and so forth. I do have the Rambler as well. I just chose the Crazy Cow, which is very similar to the Rambler, but the Crazy Cow is a different thickness of the double rump from the Rambler. The Rambler is also double rump, but it's not quite the same. As you can see, just stunning punch and colors, lots of cool, unique character. This one rated right in, I think, 6 ounces. Looks to be about 6 ounces to my eye. That is a Merriam Fire Red or Regine Kilty going with it. And this boot actually here is built off a bunch of parts I built myself, which is JFJ Baker's insole or footbed that you can't see, midsole, and heel lifting leather, which is the other big English tannery, which is JFJ Baker's, which primarily focuses on oak bark tanned, but they do some other pieces. I wouldn't use them in boots because they use fish oil as the tanning process. And if they don't use fish oil, they use birch oil, which is going to make it smell like a wet cigar tray. So, but yeah, both fantastic tanneries. CF Stead does some great stuff. Like, this stuff is the perfect casual leather. There is not another company in the world that makes casual leather as good as CF Stead. Would I work in it? Probably not. I mean, you could maybe get away with it. I don't know. I wouldn't risk it. But for casual leather, I don't know if anybody can beat these guys with a 10-foot stick. Like, whatever options you want, they got. In 12 different colors and like 30 different tannage options. It is I wouldn't call it stiff, but it's not like a unfirm. For a suede, it's stiff for a suede. That's what I'd call it. It's strong enough it does not necessarily need a backer. It doesn't ship with any kind of backer on it, which a lot of suede products need. Obviously, this is a monkey boot, so there's lots of parts that are doubled up in multiple areas. But yeah, CF Stead makes some awesome shit. Between their waxy commanders, their waxy mohawks, their ramblers, this right here, which is the crazy cow, and the next thing I'm about to show, which is their kudu. They're one of the best. Like, no ifs, no ands, no real buts. And on top of all of that, they do this suede in these like casual styles. Like, there's a reason why a ton of the American boot makers run a ton of these CF Stead leathers, especially when it comes to the ramblers, crazy cows, waxy commanders, waxy mohawks, and the kudus. Like, you go pick Parkhurst, Caswell, Oak Street Bootmakers, Truman. I mean, hell, even White's has ran this as a stock offering before. Like, not through Baker's, like actually had it as a stock offering. I don't think Alden uses any, but, name a company. Grant Stone, hell, Rancourt and Russell might have even used CF Stead. Honestly, those would be perfect applications for both of them. But like, they've ran this, and a lot of these are core offerings in their lineup. This particular pair is going to be quite a bit stiffer because, as anybody can see, the Baker's is right around 14.5 ounces. So it's not double midsole, but it's definitely much bigger than the 11 iron midsole. Sorry, I said 14.5 ounces. It's 14.5 iron.
Irons.
Yeah. So that's that. By the time it's sanded, it's 17.5 ounces. Versus the 11 iron midsole that Franks, Nicks, Whites, those guys normally use. So definitely very stiff, but because it's a 14-month tanning process,
I think most of them are like down to 9 now for most stuff.
They might be.
Isn't that right? I think the 11 is like the commander, the extra thick.
Yeah,
I think 9 is the normal.
You might not be wrong. They sent me an 11 to model after these to make my parts out of. They sent me the 11, so they only keep the one circumference size now, but they do have 2 or maybe 3 thicknesses. But it is quite a bit thicker than like your standard like Wilshire or Monkey Boot will get. And the Monkey Boot generally gets a slightly thinner one than the rest of them too, just so that it flexes right, especially with the half sole. But this guy here, like I said, it's a beast. But because, like I said, this is oak bark tanned over 14 months, your foot squishes into it right away. It's a much gentler process. Or I'm killing all the blood vessels on the bottom of my foot, one of the two. It's not as bad as a double midsole. And then this is CF Stead Cloud Wax or Waxy Cloudburst Kudu, otherwise known as Cloud Kudu, depending on who you talk to. This is a waxy, very heavy pull-up leather. Even though it's a very light leather, it does have a ton of pull-up. It's got a ton of beauty marks all over it from the rough life of a kudu. This is a very soft, not high in temper, but very good memory leather. So,
African antelope, guys.
yep. So
You didn't know.
you can see I can crank it all the way over, and it pretty much goes entirely back to shape with no issues. Same way the other direction. So even though the temper's not there, its memory is quite good. Could you work in kudu? Yeah, I think you probably could. Is it the best idea? Probably not. It's not overly expensive. Kudu tends to run. You can get Rambler, Waxy Mohawk, Waxy Commander, Crazy Cow for right around the $180 mark. Keep in mind most of those are double rumps, so you're only getting around 11 to 12 square feet usually. So they're not super duper expensive. Kudu does run, which you do get a fairly large hide out of the kudu, even though I'm not sure how much of it's entirely usable. I have a kudu hide sitting back there in the closet. They usually run about $240, $260, so they're a little bit more expensive. But they're super comfortable, and like I said, they hold the shape quite well. Like, even though they're not high on the temper scale, like their memory of getting back to their original shape is very good. So, definitely high on the recommend scale if you've never had kudu to get kudu. At least have one pair. Just kind of think about the build you want in mind before pulling the trigger. I do think something like this would go great, like if we're talking Franks specifically, like a pair of Rikers. This would be great for a pair of Rikers. I do think my choice of a mock toe is another great option for this, especially a two-piece mock toe. Because to not have these split apart, two-piece mock toe and something super stiff like Shinky is just going to cause this to split. Like these aren't going to hold together. The softer, more malleable leathers that have a lot more give to them are going to keep this toe closed together and not separating way better. But yeah, I mean, kudu is quite cool. It does crease in a really unique way. It's like when you walk in it, it does like these like super fine there we go. These really super fine micro creases that you see right there. That is very unique. I don't think too many other leathers do that I've seen. It also burnishes like really shiny against your pants. See if I can. Yeah, right there. You can see that spot right there on my ankle bone, where it burnishes extremely shiny against pants. But yeah,
I've got a kudu in production right now. I can't wait.
yeah, it is definitely one everyone should get, if it only at least one pair. Especially if like you're against ostrich or kangaroo, this is a great option. As an alternative, if ostrich or kangaroo is too wild for you. That covers most of the English tanneries. Obviously, everyone's heard the term French calf and stuff made out of very fine French calf. The two that are purchased in the United States the most are Alrin from southern France, and then the one I'm about to butcher, which is Baudin. Oh crap.
Odon Joyeux.
Yeah. Baudin Joyeux, which is known for like their insanely good liners. They call them dream hides, but they're considered some of the best like liners in the world. There are other companies. I'm not even gonna try to pronounce any of the names. That do like the museum calf. They do that a lot of people like in dress shoes. They do the box calf, which is the black that everyone has seen in a pair of Allen Edmonds or TLB Majorca, Carmina, so on and so forth. The way calves are raised in Europe really leads credence to how like tight the grain is, how well it moves, lack of fat lines, lack of manure burns. For a fine pair of boots, it doesn't need, or even pair of dress shoes, that doesn't need tons of like patent leather work done to it to fix all the imperfections in it, right? So that's kind of where we see. I have a suspicion, though I don't have any proof, that a lot of the like Galoon that does a ton of different calf styles most likely sources European calf. I doubt they're doing a lot of the shrinking and stuff that they're doing with American calf. But that particular region, especially in the southern part of France, it is known for their French calf. And you see that French calf in like high-end Japanese boots. Lee Miller from Texas Traditions uses a ton of high-end French calf. You see Lisa Sorrell, Ray DeWart using French calf a lot as well. French are more chrome tanned versus veg tan. You'll find the same thing. I don't think CF Stead makes a single veg tan article. I think almost all of CF Stead is chrome tan, including the kudu. Whereas JFJ Baker is a veg tan exclusive company. I've never seen anything they've done that's been veg tan or that's been chrome tanned. The Italians the same way.
I guess he didn't touch on JFJ Baker's real long, but they make some of the best midsoles out there, and they also make outsoles that are excellent.
Yes. Depending on who you talk to, you're going to hear one of two answers when it comes to that. Everyone's heard of JR with the popularity of internet folklore with cobblers and whatnot. Most of your bespoke shoemakers would tell you that JR soles are actually too hard and not flexible enough for a proper shoe. And they would lean you more towards JFJ Baker or one of the German tanneries we're about to talk about here in a little bit. But you tend to fall into two categories where you make your holdfasts, your midsoles, and your heel lifts out of JFJ Baker, or you make them out of Black Forest, which we'll talk about Garaberry Martin here in a little bit when we get to the German tanneries, which is the oak bark tanned, like the Black Forest Tanning Company logo that most people see. Even guys like Steve at Bedo's Leatherwork use that as his house leather.
Some people might call it Gruber, I think, but I think that's what the city really.
Yeah,
I think
it's in the
prominently
stamp.
write it in a way where some people get confused.
Yeah, they act, and unfortunately they have 3 different stamps that they use that all have different company names on them. The Black Forest Tanning Company is one that people have seen. There's 2 other ones, and they have the word Gruber and another word next to it. I'm not even going to try it. It's like Gerbung, but I doubt it's like Gerbung. I'm sure that's not how it's said. But that tannery's been around since the 1650s. And besides one of the other German ones we'll talk about, which is Kilgore, who bought from JR, which JR was only 7 generations. It was only 150 years old. Kilgore's older, and so is Gerberry Martin, or Gerbery Martin. We're going with Gerbery Martin. But George Martin is the guy who founded it, which he just called it George Martin. That's way easier to say. But yes, you've got Gerbery Martin, who's been around for a very long time. They are almost exclusively focused on oak bark tanned leather. Most people have heard of JR, especially with how popular they've been with cobblers and like the internet rise of bringing cobblers back in the last 5 years of being the ultimate outsole. Obviously, they went out of business a couple years ago, as most people know. Kilgore is the one who bought the recipe. Is either sold to Kilgore or they approached in the purchase. However it worked out, the thing they did it in such a way that if the 6th or 7th generation JR guy that sold it wants to buy it back, I think he can. And they didn't sell like the name and the logo. They sold the rights to the formula and him to be able to say JR by Kilgore on the bottom of the sole, which is how they come now, if you've seen the new ones. And Kilgore is another 14, just like Gerbery Martin, is another 14-month oak bark tanning process in big pits. They are focused more on outsoles. Like JR didn't really do midsoles and like lifting leather. They sold bins you could make it yourself out of, but they didn't really focus a lot in that. The pre-cut outsoles are what everybody used. Kilgore is kind of in the same boat, but they do some upper leathers. Overall, I haven't had anything done in the Kilgores yet, but from everything I've heard and seen, it sounds like they've got the formula pretty spot on. Like, obviously, when JR went out of business, it took, another 14 months to get the first supply out. It wasn't something that was going to come out overnight. It's, too long of a process. Not a ton of complaints. Most people seem to be happy with what they're getting, so it seems like they've brought the JR formula back. But I can say personally, from the stuff I have in the Baker's leather outsole and the JR outsole, which I do have 4 pairs of dress shoes with the JR outsole, I would 100%, 12 times out of 10, go with the Baker's outsole. It's softer, it flexes better, it feels like it wears way less, especially through the skin layer. It's a little bit thicker. Overall, especially since it's slightly more flexible for a little thicker, like that would be my recommendation. And if you follow any content by like guys like Marcel Mr. San, Lisa Sorrell, Lee Miller, you don't see any of these guys using JR outsoles. They're all using Baker's out. Actually, in the cowboy boot community, no one's going to know what JR Rendenbach is. Not going to have a clue. That's more of a kind of dress shoe world kind of thing. But as the 3 we just talked about, they were all outsole oak bark tan makers in Germany, just like JFJ is in England. Though JFJ does make some upper leathers, but like I said, the majority of them are tanned in either fish or birch oil. Fish, every time it rains, you're going to smell the fish oil. Everything else that's done in the birch oil is going to smell like a wet cigar ashtray when it gets wet because of the birch oil. In the case of Germany, there are 2 companies that do upper leather. One's in northern Germany and is less well known, but has been around since 1850s, and they're Cobell. A guy named Dennis from Custom Craft is credited for being the one that's kind of put boots made with Cobell leather into boot tubers' hands for people to actually know about this tannery. It's a very local tannery. They don't do lots of outsourced shipping, but their products are considered quite good, and obviously over the past 2 years they've gotten a much bigger name, especially with like a couple pairs of Dennis's boots ending up in the Patina Thunderdome. But they're northern Germany, like getting close to Denmark levels of north. Whereas the other one that's really well known is Fredericksburg. Now, Fredericksburg actually burnt down in 2003. And they, I'm pretty sure, do the tannage in Poland now, not in Germany. But it's still the same company. And they're known for very high-end French calf. Like $5,000 dress shoe high French calf. So I don't own anything in Fredericksburg. Obviously, the stuff that's from the burnt down Fredericksburg is worth a ton of money. You see it a lot in bespoke Japanese dress shoes. Once again, make a fantastic product, very high-end product, but nothing that you're going to see in a Pacific Northwest bootmaker's hands anytime soon. Or probably ever. Unless brave enough to send it in. I personally wouldn't. That price of leather's white glove treatment leather. So
That leaves us with one, I think. France.
which one did I miss in France?
Alrin.
I talked a little bit about Alran. Alran is museum French calf. Maybe I called it Alran or something. But once again, another French calf maker. That's going to be one that's more focused on stuff you see in the outside of boots, and they do a lot of like cool patterns. So things embossed in the leather, hatch grains, pebble grains, stuff like that. They're pretty well known for. They also do a lot of thinner articles so that you could do leatherworking goods with them without needing them to be split. Now they do full size stuff, but they're definitely much more the dress shoe market. French calf is don't want to call it a price point thing, but I'm going to call it a price point thing because I can't think of another way of explaining it. It's expensive enough, and is usually used in people that are looking for something more high end. Like Lee Miller at Texas Traditions uses a ton of French calf. Obviously, at Lee Miller's boots starting, I think at 4,000 is his starting point. Not a lot of hardworking cowboys are buying them boots to be doing cowboying things in, right? That's why you see mostly French calf, ostrich, alligator, elephant, stuff like that. But I am sure there's people that have worked in the stuff he's made. Probably not with the French calf, though. That being said, it is definitely a more expensive acquired taste. It is, well, I shouldn't even say acquired taste. It's definitely a more expensive taste. It's definitely for a more perfect / not everyday use kind of boot, unless your everyday use is like the CEO for a multi-million-dollar company. Which, I mean, I'm sure there's a ton of those watching this channel. Just a ton of them here to learn all this boot knowledge. The only thing we might have from that echelon is their executive that's had to do the research for them, right?
There you go. They're out there.
Yeah. But, and then one I didn't mention that is kind of a cool one, another kind of Herman Oak style one, is there's a Swedish tannery called Tarnjo. Tarnjo makes 10 to 14 ounce oak bark tanned in punchy colors, where they actually do a rough out finish, a smooth out finish, but it is a T-core leather, as you can see from the side. It is not struck through, which makes a super cool effect. Cool. Not a lot of people use Tarnjo, and it's almost exclusively used in the belt world, but there's a number of makers who use Tarnjo. It's not impossible to get. Pretty unique leather. It scratches kind of cool in the fact, like, when you go and scratch against it, it like makes a really bright scratch that is super easy to just redistribute the oils into a not bright scratch. It's still there because I scratched pretty hard, but it's a not bright scratch. Now, if I really rubbed out with my finger and brought it back, I could pretty much make it go away. So you can tell it's obviously an oil tanned leather, but like, as you can see, the scratch was super duper bright, and it took very little to redistribute those oils. But this doesn't bleed on anything. Like, I have hand-dyed belts that bleed all over all kinds of clothing, right? Somehow, whatever they do, doesn't bleed all over everything, but has super bright scratches that you can put on it, which is super unique. It also, from the underside, burnishes like crazy. Like, that's a side that would sit up against it. It burnishes a lot. But super cool, unique leather. Not super stretchy, but like not, like over the top. Like, I can make it stretch some. So take that as you will. It's a neat tannery. Like I said, we don't hear about Swedish tanneries too often. I think Isaac from Pigeon Tree keeps this in like 6 colors. This just happens to be the red. But yeah, my tastes have kind of moved towards this is tannery dyed and finished. I've started moving towards belts that are done by hand, just because you can't wear 7 belts, and if I'm gonna have the belt collection I have, might as well wear the best. Now, it would have been nice to start there, not end there, but that's how the world works. Learn from my mistakes, don't follow my path.
Words to live by.
Yeah. So, with
for
that,
everybody else,
for everybody that hasn't already made those mistakes, yeah. I mean, and that covers, like I said, a ton of the heavy hitters in the European scene. I mean, there's obviously more than that. The history of Europe goes back deep, so obviously the history of leatherworking is going to go back deep. I didn't touch any Eastern European tanneries, which there are a number of. I also didn't get over to, there's a ton of, like, leatherworking craftsmen in the Ukraine and Poland area. Some are well known. I think Wolf and Beard is one of the most well known. He makes a very iconic mock toe out of the Ukraine. He has a couple other models, but his Mock Toe's one of the ones that's really well known. So there is stuff out of that side. Once again, there's only so many boots that one man can own reasonably. I mean, I can own 15 times the amount that I do. I can't wear 15 times the amount that I do. So at a certain point, I don't want to just be a collector. I also want to be a user. But that user means I've got to keep, my functional number hopefully under 35 to really be able to use all of them. Now, it's going to sound asinine aloud, right? Like 35 boots. Like, who the fuck is this guy? What's he doing? Changing them every hour? I will say, during the Thunderdome, which is literally fucking killing me. Yes, after I do my workout later in the day between 5 and 6, I do switch pairs of boots. Because it's killing me to wear 2 pairs of boots for 6 months. It's murdering my insides. But the flip side of this is there's no other way to gain this experience. Like, I could tell you a ton of these boot makers just look at the surface layer of a lot of these leathers, and until someone bites the bullet and sends the leather in or offers to buy the entire hide for them to give it a shot and see how good or bad the leather can be, it most likely would have never gotten used. Like, 5 years ago, we were arguing between Chrome Tan and Veg Tan on why no one should be bringing Wicket and Craig in. And now everybody offers Wicket and Craig.
Your story.
It is. This is, someone has to bite the bullet and try this shit to get people to stock it, want to build it, bring those products in. You see guys like like Caswell, Kevin from Caswell Boots, who brings in like 6 and 8 boot runs of these super unique leathers. And he's the only person doing it. Now, is he making money at it? Probably not. But he's also building a brand at it that is able to do tons of ready-to-wear options while having this like, hey, I'm going to go to the made-to-order and see that I'm offering 4 boots in this one leather. Who wants it? You get people out there trying it, you see how it works out. If no one's willing to try it, it's all anecdotal. And there's a lot of the industry that lived off anecdotal. It took a couple looks like that wrinkle's too much. I don't like how the snowball test works on that. Snowball test is a crumple test where you grab a hide, squeeze it real hard with your hand, let go, and see what happens, right? See how it springs back, see how the color moves, see how it responds to being pulled in multiple directions from different angles. I've, like I said, heard it called the crumple test. I've heard it called the snowball test. Whatever it is, it's the same thing. You're testing pull up, temper, consistency, and memory spring back, essentially. But there was a point in time where almost none of this cool stuff was really being tried or offered, and no one was really putting effort into it. You were just getting whatever colors of Seidel they can bring in, and luckily we are not in that world anymore. We're in the world we're in right now that we have these options. We have these cool leathers. There are people willing to try this stuff. Like, I could tell you right now with absolute certainty, if I didn't bring the Macchiato horse rump in to run the Merriam horse rump on the boot pair that I ran that picked up a ton of traction in the Frank's boot community Facebook group, they would not offer it as one of the leathers that's hanging out there. It probably would have never been a thing. And they've made a ton of boots out of that horse rump, including Knob's purple amethyst horse boots, that I'm still on the fence about how I feel about that color.
I mean, I don't know. I think we probably would have gotten there at some point because there were others that have created it or that have brought it in and used it. Frank's wasn't the first. So we might have gotten there anyway, but you definitely sped it up. You definitely made it happen. I mean, no, it's hard to say with that one.
Yeah, I think
Because
it helped to get a bunch
I
of the
mean, you
other
look
ones
like
into.
you look at how many years that Westco has been doing Merriam. I
Mhm.
mean, they even did a special collab with Merriam. They did a special collab boot with them. So they've been had a relationship and been making heavy duty B&W boots.
I mean, like I said,
I
Truman
think
did
a
it
lot of
first,
people
but
wanted. I think a lot of people wanted it. They just didn't know. They were just afraid to buy their own hide.
oh yeah, no, I think that's the case because I think Wesco running it is probably what gave Kyle the firepower to get Whites to run it before they ran it. And once Wrights ran it a couple times, that's when Nick's decided to run it the one time. You know, Nick's running it the one time and me getting the jacked up toe cap is what pushed me to send the macchiato to Frank's to get Frank to run. I mean, it's all a sliding scale. Um, but I mean, I could tell you that Whites and Nick's doesn't want to run it anymore. They've had enough issues with it. It's one that they don't want to do. So, you know, take that for what it's worth. But, you know, that being said, there's always stinkers, right? I haven't struck out with any leathers, but I have struck out with some colors that I don't think anybody else would have been crazy enough to buy. Golf green was a rough one. I think they're finally selling the last of it, but the golf green was one that did linger for quite a while.
I think the New Mexico one was one too.
Mm-hmm.
Pueblo.
Yep. It was. Well, the Pueblos are mine, but it was the Montana Bisons that I convinced them to bring in that they tried the cognac, the green, and I think there was a gray. I think.
I would have vetoed that.
Yeah. So, but
Nobody asked me.
yeah, was before they added moss green to the Bighorn lineup. So that was a
Well, that's for
Palisade.
sure.
That was a Palisade only color when that was ordered. So now that and blue are being offered permanently as a Bighorn lineup, it's a little bit of a different story.
That blue is pretty cool.
Yep. But no.
All right. Got another talk complete.
Yep. Don't forget
European Tannery done.
Yeah, like, comment, subscribe. Questions down below, especially if they're related to Battleassie or Merriam. You'll make my day. I really do believe in these tanneries. They have very quickly worked their way up my list. If it wasn't for Dublin, Oiled Latigo, and Horween Shell Cordovan, honestly, those tanneries might have been dumped off my list of stuff I would even look at again. So, these guys, they do got it. They do know what they're doing. Anyway, have a good one. Thanks,
All right.
folks.
Gotcha.